Let's be great today.
Hello, everyone. We're here today with Senior Airman Ray Petty. He is a reservist paralegal, IMA paralegal out of MacDill Air Force Base. We are so excited about this conversation. We're so excited to talk to Airman Petty about the things that he's gone through, his resilient story. We've all seen the video by now that has gone viral since then, and we're so extremely proud of everything that he has accomplished and everything that he has done up to this point. We really can't say thank you enough to Airman Petty for giving us this opportunity to chat with him today so that he can share that story now with our community. Again, we're so proud of how you've represented the Air Force and how you've represented the paralegal career field. It's just been really incredible and amazing to watch. But at this time, we just want to give you the opportunity to tell us a little bit about yourself, tell us a little bit about your background and what you do.
Yes, sir. So my name is Ray Curtis Petty Jr. I am originally from Albany, Georgia. I attended the unsinkable Albany State University in Albany, Georgia. My undergrad degree was in political science. I attended law school at WMU Cooley Law School. And right here in the campus is in Tampa, Florida. That's where I'm currently sitting as I'm, doing this interview as well. So started off in the military at Robins Air Force Base. And once I started law school, I came down to MacDill and been at MacDill ever since. So it's been a great experience being here at MacDill and just being in Florida in general has just really been a blessing. So just being able to learn from different leadership, the different changes that we've seen in the world, the different types of missions that take place here at MacDill, it's been a blessing to be a part of that and to be able to learn and to help with the mission here.
So you mentioned getting a degree in political science, or a bachelor's degree in political science. Did that happen before you joined the Air Force, or how did you get that one?
Yes, sir. So my journey was a little bit backwards. And what I mean by that, I mean by my introduction that came into the military. Typically, we would see, a lot of, our enlisted folks, they would go into the military and then go to college. I was a little bit backwards in the sense of I had an undergraduate degree and then I went in to be an enlisted person. So a big reason to as to why I went about that route, not just for the GI Bill, but it was really because I always knew I wanted to be a JAG. I always knew that, I had the opportunity to commission in and they were, going to give me, let's say, security forces or, one of those other types of jobs that could have been possibly related to what I wanted to do. But, I always thought to myself, like, what better way, to be, who it is that you're aspiring to be than to be able to work under them. So I was willing to humble myself, whatever, I needed to do to be able to learn, from attorneys, actual JAGs who are actually doing this on a day-to-day basis. And not only from, a dream or aspiration standpoint, I also think about it more from a leadership maturity standpoint, from the perspective of what better way to lead our airmen than to actually be an airman ourselves, So I never wanted to lose, or I always wanted to learn, that perspective, of my people, being able to understand the lifestyle of an airman, the day-to-day on things that they may experience and things that they may go through. So, once I'm graced and blessed enough to be put in a position of leadership, I know how to lead because I understood how to follow.
Man, it sounds like that trip to becoming a lawyer has been everything but easy. You mind just giving us a little opening the door, however you feel comfortable about that trip, because it really, I believe it's the travel that really makes the person, and I like what you just said about follower, because we're all followers. No matter how much a leader you are, you'll always be a follower.
Absolutely. My journey for law school really started when I was a kid. I was that kid who I knew I wanted to be a lawyer even when I was a young adult. Growing up in my grandmother's house and being around my parents, like watching those old shows like Matlock, In the Heat of the Night. We all have been the infamous Law and Order, watching shows like that and watch them in the courtroom and doing those different things when it comes to how the law is structured and applied and how justice is administered and how defenses are given. So those things really cultivated me even at a young age. And, I remember being that kid at career day at school, and I had I was that kid that came to school with the too big shirt and the too little tie. And, I used to get one of those bags that my sister got and tried to find one of the ones that was as manly looking as possible to try to carry it to school and say, I'm a lawyer. I'm going to be a lawyer. Like, I was that kid. I have like photos to even prove it. And even growing up, as I always knew that was in my heart and my dream, I knew that was something I had an aspiration to one day do, but it did not come with obstacles. I used to, as growing up as an adolescent, I was told by teachers that, hey, maybe this kid should be in special education classes. He doesn't seem like he's able to maybe grasp these concepts or whatever the case may be. And, even as I got older, coaches were saying things like, oh, this kid, he doesn't even know the plays. He doesn't even know the playbook. He can't even memorize the playbook. He doesn't know it. And those things you would think, could be traumatizing, to an individual, but I always was the type of person to where I understood that not only did I had to understand that it wasn't that I had any learning deficiencies. I had to learn that I learned differently. And I think that once I started learning things like that about myself, I had to do twice as much just to learn or to get just what somebody else got. I had to put in more work. That was how I learned. I couldn't just do the basic or the average or the minimum and expect the maximum. And it wasn't that I was, had some type of deficiency. I just was different. And I had to learn that and accept that about myself and acknowledge that at an early age. And I remember even as I got out of high school and, I went to school, at a community college for 2 years. And, I had the opportunity once I finished up my 2-year associates. And I told my mother, I said, Mama, I'm looking at possibly going off to some school, like maybe in Atlanta or, some big institution. And she told me something that I would never forget. And this has really carried me through a lot of my journey, no matter where I go especially when it comes to community service of our communities and also service to our nation. She said, well, how can you say that you can go somewhere else and do something when you haven't done anything where you're from first? And, for me growing up in Albany, Georgia, being the fifth, ranked poorest city in the whole country, I decided to stay home and finish up my 4-year degree where I was from in Albany, Georgia, at Albany State University. So as I, started going out through that path, I did a lot of things in the community. I started to really find my passion for service. And once I got done with Albany State, I started applying to law schools. I graduated from Albany State in 2014. But I didn't get into law school until fall of 2017. I got rejected from law schools for 3 straight years. I mean, rejection after rejection after rejection after rejection. I used to get so many denial letters in the mail that my mother used to throw them in the trash because she didn't want me to be discouraged, But she didn't know I was getting the emails, though. So I was still getting it. So I was still getting it on the back end. But, it had gotten so bad when it came to my rejections. Like I was working 4 jobs. I had 4 jobs total during that 3-year period. I worked 3 of them at the same time. Sometimes I would save up 2 to 3 checks just to put in a application. Those applications are definitely not cheap. But I just knew it was what I wanted to do. I worked at TJ Maxx with one of my jobs that I worked. And even during that time, I used to tell myself that I'm going to law school. I'm going to law school. No matter what anybody else told me, I used to just tell myself, like, anybody can encourage you, but sometimes you got to learn how to encourage yourself as well. And I used to tell myself that. And I used to just say, like, I got to walk, I got to talk like I already got it. And as I'm on this path, like, there were times to where, or even working at TJ Maxx in that 6-year period, I would buy stuff like ties and bow ties, and I would buy dress shirts. I would just be preparing myself as if I'm going to law school for 3 years, And I just remember within that 3-year time frame as well, my mother and my brother, he's prior military service as well. And they pulled me off to the side one day and they said, maybe you ought to think about, doing something else. Maybe you ought to, think about, we know that you've been trying to get into law school, but, maybe this isn't for you. And I don't tell you that part of the story to just say that, oh man, they didn't want to see me go to law school. No, they didn't want to see me struggle. They seen that I was working 3 jobs at one time, just to try to make ends meet and do those type of things that a young adult is supposed to be doing. Life doesn't stop just because you're trying to get into law school. Life doesn't stop just because I had to take the bar exam. So as I, started to matriculate throughout this process, I just remember telling myself again, okay, if somebody can come up to me, if anybody can come up to me or come up to you and say, you should not be doing this and you don't do it, that means that it was never for you to do in the first place. So I had to remind myself, even in those moments, that this is what I'm supposed to do. So I learned that valuable lesson of you have to be careful who you tell your dreams to, because sometimes people may not see your vision. It may not be for them to see at the time that you got it. So during that season of my life, I had to stop telling them that I was applying to law school. I had to start making sure that if I was going to apply to law school, I wasn't going to tell anybody because, I'm a very spiritual person. But one thing I learned out of a revelation in that moment when it came to my dreams and being able to tell different persons and different things, because sometimes we feel so anxious. We want something so bad, that we're just kind of looking for any type of help that we possibly can get to get there, even if it means telling family, trying to get to that place as well. But, sometimes we got too many fingerprints on our blueprints. We got too many hands in the pot, that is trying to get you to where you're trying to go. But it's like my pastor back home always says, he said, ain't been there, can't tell going there how to get there. I was trying to get to where I wanted to go from people who've never gone where I'm trying to get, so I don't know if any of that made sense in the moment, but, it's good preaching now, because now I got the revelation of, okay, sometimes, you just got to do it. Don't advertise the change. Just make it. Just be you. And I remember when I finally got, accepted into a law school, at first, I told myself like, okay, this is when the military came up within that 2 to 3 year period. And I said, okay, even if I get into law school, because remember, I'm preparing myself as if I'm going to law school. So I'm thinking out everything. I didn't have any help when it came to things like thinking out how to get to law school because I'd never seen anybody do it before. So I'm going out throughout this process and I'm like, man, how do I do it? Okay, even if I get to law school, how the heck am I going to pay for it? So the military was a big thing for me because I would say, okay, I know I want to go JAG. I know I want to do all these things, but how am I going to pay for it? And, I start thinking to myself, this is my dreams. My dreams are my responsibility. It's not somebody else's obligation. So if I want to make this thing happen, I need to find a way to make it happen. So the military, being a paralegal was one of the ways to make it happen. And I was not going to choose any other job. I got offered other jobs. Like I mentioned before about the officer going up to be an officer and even other jobs on the enlisted side as well. But I remember telling my recruiter, I said, I will not take another job outside of being a paralegal. Like, this is the career field that I want to be in. I want to be able to learn from people who are doing what it is that I want to do. So that's how I got to that point. Now, when I finally got accepted into law school, the move got made to McDill. McDill actually kind of happened sort of by accident. McDill happened to be, and maybe I'll scale back for just a second. I had some mentors, that were encouragers to me in Albany. And Pastor Bevel in Albany, Georgia, at Sherwood Church, turned out to be one of my mentors. But what I didn't know is by the time I got accepted into law school and I realized that there was an Air Force base at McDill. So I put in a request to see, can I do some of my seasonal orders there to get some of my GI Bill? And what I didn't know at that time was my supervisor that I was going to have at McDill was my mentor's brother's wife.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy, completely crazy. And during the time that I was working in Albany, Georgia, working my 3 to 4 jobs, I hadn't talked to him in a while because I'm working. I got a lot going on. And I didn't realize it until it was the first day at PT. And surprisingly, somebody hit my car. We did PT off base on my first day at McDill when I was on my seasonal tour for about 6-7 months. And this was before law school. I had to do those orders before law school started. And first day of PT, when somebody hit my car, I had such a good attitude because I was like, look, I've been praying to be here. I've been wanting to be here for a long time. I'm finally in a position to start law school. And Sergeant Bevel, she came up to me. She said, Ray, do you know a Pastor Bevel back in Albany, Georgia? I said, that's my mentor. She said, that's my brother-in-law. Like, I was like, oh man. So it just was a super small world. Like, but it's connections and opportunities and, things that happen in life. I just believe that they don't happen by accident. Like these things are intentionally done. And, as I got through, finished my orders with McDill, my family finally started looking. They was like, okay, look, we know you got accepted into law school. We're going to try to support you in any way that we can. So my sister at the time, my sister is the oldest out of me and my other sibling, my older brother. She's the oldest. Her name was Shakoti Sapp. She was a registered nurse. And she moved down from Georgia to Tampa just to help me to get through law school. She said, hey, I understand you got some of your GI Bill, but let me try to help take some of the burden off you. So that all you have to do is just to focus on school. Just focus on school, focus on your dreams. Like you've been wanting to do this for a long time. Now you're in a position to do it. So we're going to try to do everything that we can do to make sure that we can support you. And my sister got me all the way until my last semester of law school, And my sister was born with sickle cell disease. And, it's a disease that many of primarily, in the African-American community are born with, to where they're autoimmune. It's not like many of ours to where it can, defend against, a lot of the, airborne, things that may, attack our immune system. Their blood doesn't clot like ours. But on, April 22nd, I remember coming into our apartment that we had at the time, and I found her non-responsive. And surprisingly, this was in 2020, and COVID was super, super bad at that time, to the point that, everybody was quarantined. And I was on my IMA military orders at the time. So I was teleworking. And I was upstairs, doing some things upstairs, as a paralegal. And I came back down. Now, she did have some surgeries on her knees about a month or 2 months before that. And what we didn't know was that she had developed sepsis in her knees. None of us knew. I'm watching Netflix with her the night before. My last conversation with her was about 30 minutes before. It was a 15-second FaceTime. Showed no signs of death whatsoever. So during that time frame of 2020, I came back down, 30 minutes or so later, and she was in the middle of the living room floor. Like, this was like a scene out of a movie. Like, I'm like, whoa, like, what just happened? Like, I just talked to you. Like, what just happened? So immediately I started performing CPR. I started, going through the process, calling EMS, after a while, calling my mother, telling her, like, she won't wake up. She won't wake up. She won't wake up. And she just got cold. She got cold. She got cold. And, EMS got there, and, she ended up passing away. And it did a lot to me in that moment, because at that moment, I had been through so many other things in life to where I just never thought I would have to deal with death. I never thought, it's not even the point to where I didn't think I would have to deal with death, but to take a step further, I didn't think I would have to deal with death in this way, this close to home, from somebody who showed me no signs of death. Now, my sister in 2019, the year before, she was on life support. In 2019, she passed away in 2020. In 2019, every single organ in her body, because of sickle cell disease, had caused her every organ to completely shut down. And at that moment, we had made a decision as a family to take her off life support, because we were just prolonging her suffering. But somehow, miraculously, through some divine intervention, she recovered. The doctors ran in there and said, hey, we think you all should stop. There's something that has happened with her vitals that we can't explain. We're not trying to give you false hope, but there is a chance. So we took that chance. We took that hope, and somehow she fully recovered. But it wasn't until 2020 to where she started to develop those infections in her knees, to where she had to have multiple surgeries on her knees. And then when she got sent back home with her and I lived together, that's when the sepsis entered her bloodstream. So for me, after that, within the very next week, I had to not only move everything out of the apartment, I had to move in with my mother. And I had to take my last 5 classes of law school in order to graduate, right? So I'm giving you a time frame at this point of 2020. My sister passed away. The very next week, I had to get ready to take 5 classes for law school. Directly after that, I had to start studying for the bar exam. Directly after that, I had to go back on military orders. Directly after that, I had to start studying for the bar exam again, and I know what you all probably are thinking, like, man, when did you have time to grieve? I didn't, and what made those matters worse is it was a blessing living with my mother, but it was also a curse at the same time. It was a blessing from the standpoint that some of the financial burden was, taken away, some of it. But on the other end, there was still the grief that never got dealt with. I lost my sister, but she lost her daughter, right? And my mother, to top all of this off, I knew my mother is a therapist, I knew that my mother could not carry and handle my pain. She couldn't handle and carry my pain the way that I could. So what I would do is, which is probably one of the worst mistakes that I had made in my life, was I would just bury myself in busy. I would just bury myself in busy. As long as I felt like I was moving, and anybody whom I've probably ever worked with in the JAG, or anybody's probably known me no more than a day, will tell you by the end of that conversation, I'm going to have some quote to tell you. I'm going to have some story or some encouraging or inspiring parable to give you by the end of that conversation. But I can honestly tell you both today and our viewers that I became a high functioning depressed person, going through this time period, because it just seemed like I never had that opportunity. My mother's a therapist, but my dad is a preacher, but I had to understand that not only am I dealing with my grief, they're dealing with their grief. Even for my father, in the last 3 years, he has lost his brother, his mother, and his father, So it's like, and his daughter, now you throw that on there, it's like, how much can they take, yet alone they're trying to take your grief as well. So I just bottled that all in, all that frustration, all those things. And I just tried to keep living. But what ended up happening is, and this is a revelation that I got in this process, that I hope that people can be encouraged by my story, in recognizing the fact that if you don't deal with something at a point when it doesn't cost you much, eventually you're going to get to a point in a place in life to where it's going to cost you everything, right? So there was a point to where the first exam, I just tried to muscle my way through it. I just tried to bury myself in busy, right? Just study. The second time around, like once I got those results back on the first time around, I just took the Band-Aid off. I said, hey, it is what it is. My mother was even at the house at that point. She was at home. And I was like, look, I'm just going to rip the Band-Aid off. I just kept telling myself that eventually I'm going to deal with my grief. And I never did. I just never did, right? And it just started to really spill out into other areas of my life. This was a season in life as I went through my second time preparing for the bar exam, to where a lot of things within me came to light, to where this was rock bottom for me. I was taking a hit in every area that you can possibly take a hit: mentally, physically, financially, emotionally, spiritually. Every single aspect of life. I'm doing DoorDash. My health had taken such a hit. I'm a fit person. I'm a gym junkie. I've won 2 5Ks just by being in the state of Florida, representing my law school. But I tell you those accolades to also tell you my failures, to say that during this time frame, I lost over 30 pounds. That stress was going somewhere. It had to go somewhere. And I remember that stress had just attacked my body so much, to the point to where it just took such a physical toll on my body, to where my hips had gotten out of place. And I remember going to the doctor. They said, Petty, your core muscles are weak. And, they were telling me that from a physical standpoint, but I also seen it more from a spiritual standpoint as well. Because as I had buried myself in busy over the past year, I just learned that I stopped doing a lot of the things that really got me to this point. I got away from my foundation. I wasn't going to church. Some days I would just stay in the room. I wouldn't go anywhere. I mean, COVID was happening too. So you just imagine throwing your grief on COVID, on top of going through everything that the world is already going through. And on top of, the world was losing somebody every day, everybody was losing family, friends, like left and right. So who am I to call somebody else, woe is me. This is what I'm going through in life, and everybody was going through something in 2020. But it wasn't, everything came to a head for me, as I got to the end of the bar exam. And this was the last remote exam that we did for the bar. And I knew something better had to be on the way. I mean, just, two side notes, even when I started preparing for the bar exam, like my focus was really challenged during this season of life on every single aspect. And what topped it off for me was when the week of the bar exam, I had a remote exam, just like many others out there. And one night a fire broke out in the hotel, like an actual fire, legit fire broke out in the hotel. I'm on the 7th floor in the corner of the building, This is the night before the exam, like 3, 4 in the morning, And then the next night, a domestic dispute broke out in like the room beside me. I was like, what is going on? Like, the week that I'm taking the bar, like, what is going on? So I did like any other responsible person would. I got my laptop and a hoodie and my charger and I left the building. But, I tell you that all in just to say that there was some moments, throughout this story where it just makes you, it goes back and you can laugh at some of those moments. But, after I got done with the bar exam, the end of July, I went back on military orders for 2021. This was August 2021. And I was doing all of my orders at this point, because I'm an IMA. And I won't lie to you, like I was on orders for about a week, maybe a week and a half, and I won't lie, like I had a mental breakdown as I was on those orders. And I had went to lunch, one day, and I just called my text. I remember texting my supervisor. I said, hey, I need to go talk to somebody. I went to the chaplain. And I looked at the chaplain when I got there, and I looked at him. I told him straight up. I said, sir, I won't lie to you. I don't want to be here, but I know I need to. And I'm the type of person to where, like, again, you would never know it. I'm a strong person. I like to work out. I'm always saying something positive. I always got a smile on my face. People never even knew it. No matter where I go, I'm saying all the great things. Praise the Lord. I'm saying all these things that where people, it would go completely undiscoverable, completely unnoticed. But I had to acknowledge in that moment that I need to talk to somebody. I need professional guidance. Like one of the wisest things that somebody always told me, especially after my sister died, one of my best friends, he told me a month before, because his father had passed away from COVID in 2020, the same exact day, but a month before my sister passed away. He said, Petty, the most difficult part about this process is when somebody passes away. When somebody passes away is not when the person passes away, because he said, hey, everybody calls you, everybody texts you. But the real challenge comes when the calls stop, when the texts stop, because at that point you're left alone with yourself, your own thoughts, And when my sister passed away, I just felt inadequate. I just felt like I wasn't enough. I felt like I didn't do enough to save her. But in all actuality, sepsis is in the bloodstream. There was nothing that I could do. I didn't even know at the time. We didn't know that she had passed away from sepsis until the autopsy came back. But I remember going to the chaplain, and I just poured all out. I didn't realize how much stuff at that point that I had went through, not only from my sister passing away, but all throughout my childhood. It wasn't until that conversation with Chaplain Caps here at McDill Chaplain here in Florida. He said, Petty, listening to your story, he said, man, you've gone through a lot of stuff. And it didn't hit me into that moment that I had, because I had never really talked to somebody about it. I have friends, who may pick up the phone here and there. We may have great conversations, but I didn't have anybody to help me to focus on my mental health, and that's something that, I encourage people to look into. Strong people are not precluded from having weak moments, right? Yep. So
Yep.
it just really hit me even during that time that I just needed to. So in starting that process of counseling, Captain Chaps, he gave me all the tools that I needed during that time. And that was the meeting for me that I can honestly look at and tell you both transparently that meeting really saved my life, because I didn't know that I had so much baggage that I was just carrying, and throughout this process, I even I kept going back to Chapman. Me and him had plenty of conversations. We still have conversations to this day. And I tell him that. And that conversation really changed my life. I really had to humble myself enough to acknowledge that I needed help. No matter how strong I felt, no matter how motivating I felt, there were times I may encourage somebody when I'm secretly discouraged myself. But you can't pour from an empty cup. Eventually, I'm so used to being Superman all the time to where now in this season of life, I had to learn how to be Clark Kent. I had to learn how to put the Superman suit away and admit that I had vulnerabilities. So going forward, even with the story, going through the chaplain, going through, I even had somebody even in my legal office as well. She mentioned something as well. That's why it's always great to have a good support team as well, because I can imagine if I wasn't able to share this story with anybody or share my weaknesses or share my struggles with other people in the office. I was able to do that here at McDill through the McDill legal office. And Ms. Shannon, our civilian paralegal, she came up to me. She said, Petty, we got this thing at our church called a grief support group. You should look into it. I said, cool. She gave me all the information. She sent me the website. Like, to me, that's a wingman. That's what a wingman is supposed to be like. She was able, she never judged me. She never looked at me crazy. I think there's such a stigma with mental health that I wish that, going forward, that we can change the core, And what I mean by change the core, I don't mean the CORE, I mean the CORP, change the core and break the stigma when it comes to seeking mental health and professional guidance. Your personal friends can only take you so far, but your professional doctors, we can go, to the doctor for, a broken, hand or broken shoulder or knee, whatever, an actual body part. But we should also be able to go to the doctor when it comes to our mind, when it comes to our mental health as well. But she mentioned the grief support group and also the counseling that I was already seeking. With counseling and the grief support group, I can look at you today and be like, hey, you know what? These groups have given me the opportunity, the tools to not only learn how to overcome certain things in life, but there are certain things like grief that you cannot overcome. There are certain things in life that you can only learn how to manage, but you can only learn how to manage if you only have the necessary tools that you only can get by going to professionals, by going to grief support groups, and that was something that I had to learn how to do in this season. And, the chaplain caps here at McDill, like I remember one of my last, experiences that I had that was really the turning point for me and going onto this upward trajectory that I'm on right now. And I told him, I said, Chaplain, I want to get myself rebaptized. He said, well, Petty, because I had already been baptized 9 years, ago. He said, well, Petty, there's really no scriptural background, for what you're trying to do. I said, well, it's symbolic. He said, well, Petty, I support you. I'll tell you that part of the story just to say that when you're looking for counsel, when you're looking for, professional help, find someone who matches your values and what you represent, who are willing to support you as you navigate these waters, and people who are also able to be honest with you as well. And he supported me and get my rebaptism. I said, Chaplain, I'm not going to call it a rebaptism. I said, I'm going to call this a release. He said, all right, well, let me know when you're going to do it. So October 15th is the day that we decided. And the goosebumps part about this story is October 15th is when we did what you all would know as a rebaptism. I call it a release, and I'll explain what I mean by release in just a moment. But I didn't know that on the day of my baptism, the baptism that I did on October 15th of 2021 was on the same exact day 9 years ago. And I didn't even know it until the day of the morning of, because it popped up on my Facebook memories. And it was just such a goosebump feel. But the word that I had gotten in that season of my life as I was doing fasting and praying, going through counseling and grief support group was release. And, I remember going through praying and realizing and understanding what that word meant to me in that season. And I was like, God, what does this mean? What does this mean? And I remember just, inside, the Lord was telling me, like, I don't just want you to forget these last, 9 years. I want you to release it so that you can walk into all the newness that I have for you, And that was a point for me to where I stopped worrying about how the story ends, what happens next. And this is all this that I'm telling you now happened before I even got my bar exam results back. This happened way before the video went viral. This happened before the video was even made. All these steps took place because I had to make a conscious decision that I had to acknowledge that I had problems. I had to acknowledge the fact that I needed help. I had to acknowledge the fact that I didn't like how I was feeling. I had to acknowledge the fact that I was angry. Even in my faith, I was angry with God because I felt like he took somebody that I needed. It just felt like I wasn't enough. It just felt like all those things from the beginning of my lifespan, being told by teachers, hey, you should be in special education classes. You know what, by coaches, he's not smart enough to remember a playbook. Oh, all these law schools, or maybe you should think about another profession, whether it comes from family being supportive or unsupportive or friends or XYZ, whatever the case may be. All of those,
just let it all go.
I had to let it all go. I had to let it go. So,
yeah, man.
Yeah.
Good Lord, I wrote down all these quotes you were saying. I'm going to start putting them up. Well, that's the interview. Thank you very much, everybody. We appreciate you. I'm just kidding. No, man. So tell me, after the release, because I think that is appropriate. Mm-hmm. After the release, talk to us about the bar exam notification.
Oh, so the bar exam notification, you mean like the first one or the second one?
Nah, the second one. First one, if there's a second one, I'm going to guess. And then from everything but by reading and hearing everything, I think we're good there. That second one is where I want to camp out.
So the second one meant a lot. As I mentioned on the first one, I just opened it. I just took the Band-Aid off. But the second time around, I told my mom, Mama, I'm not going to open this without you. And she was at the house that day, and she was actually talking to a client, and she says, she finishes up the call. She was like, hey, they got an emergency. I have a family emergency right now. Because right when I got the email notification, I'm sitting in the kitchen. I'm waving at her like, hey, it just got real. Like, it just got real. I got the hotline bling over here, And she gets off the phone and she comes over there. And even before the fact, she asked me, she said, why are you dressed up? Like, a lot of people see me in an orange cardigan and a bow tie. And I go back to my days at TJ Maxx. I said, well, Mom, I got to look like God had done something for me. I don't know what these results are gonna show. And I said, but I'm going to look like where I'm going. And the whole world seen me thank my mom at the end of the video. What they didn't see was that I also thanked her at the beginning. And I told her that no matter how this turns out, thank you for allowing me to live here. Thank you for, supporting me. I'm 29 years old. I'm living with my mother, like that just doesn't happen at the age of 29. But my mother was like, hey, this is your dream. I'm not kicking you out the house just because you haven't passed the bar exam yet. It's not like you're out here just doing anything. Like, I'm going to support you. Like, there were days to where even as I got these exam results back, and even as I was studying for this time around, like, there were some days I forgot to eat. There were some days that me and my mother live in the same house. We wouldn't even see each other for a whole week or two, because I'm up early, I'm back home late. And so when you see her tears in that video, it's not just because of the things that she's seen me struggle through. She also seen my sacrifices, So I couldn't share that moment with anybody else besides my mother on that day that I got that notification to my email. And, I remember getting that notification, and I'm kind of like, I'm praying. I'm like, God, I just trust you. Like, I don't know, somehow, some way, you know. But I opened up the email, and at first I got kind of scared because I started like reading it. Like, I talked to a friend of mine who took the same jurisdiction that I did about a month or so before. She was like, Ray, when I passed the same jurisdiction, my congratulatory email had like 3 sentences, and that was it. Mine had like 3 paragraphs. So when I see paragraphs, like I started stepping back, like, because I'm like, I'm just looking for, did you pass or did you fail? Like, you know, I'm trying to see what's what. So I'm going on there, I'm looking, and then like I started seeing the score that I got, and I knew it was enough, and I'm like, I kind of started backing up, like, holy, like, camoli, like I'm just kind of overjoyed. My mother, I don't know, like she just immediately seen it. I guess she was just kind of waiting for me to catch up when I seen it, but it was a
Man, let
great.
me tell you something. Watching your mom, man, that being a father, you could just feel the pride that she had.
Yeah.
Man, I know you feel it, but sometimes it's just good to just be aware that it exudes. She just had it. You can see. So there's no doubt in the mind of anybody watching that video that that woman was so proud of her son, and she knew exactly what went through in order to get that there. So, man, hats off to her. I'd like to meet her one day.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
She's incredible. She sacrificed so much for me to be here as well. It all started with her. I mean, my mom, teen mom, high school dropout, GED, you know, three kids, you know, single mother. So all those things, like she told us at an early age. I mean, when we had nothing, she said, you all are going to break generational cycles, you know. Um, she started this. You know, after she got her GED, she went to college. Then she got her master's degree. Like, she became the example. Like, she always told us, she said, like, I don't want y'all to have role models. I want y'all to have real models, you know. And she was a real model for us. You know, it's one thing to see people, say we always see social media, for example, like we see everybody's highlights, but how often do we hear somebody's lowlights? You know, to say that, hey, I was down and got up. You know, I'm to the stage and age now. Like, I'm afraid of folks who don't go through nothing. I'm
Oh yeah.
afraid of them. You know, like I feel like, hey, y'all ain't got no value. You know, I need some thieves out there that's looking for some houses to rob. I don't want to be robbed, but I'm trying to just paint a picture that people that have value, it's just something about them, you know, that they have something that's worth losing that they don't want to lose. So they're going to appreciate it more. They're going to honor the sacrifices that they've made. So my mother was that for me. She was that chain breaker.
Man. Oh no. So what is next?
What is next?
Which I know you said before you're trying not to focus on what next, but not at the end. But what's next?
You know, I would love, to be an Air Force JAG. You know, that's always been a dream of mine since I was a kid. And I even have this in my office. I've been carrying this around. I know you guys probably do that when you all have something, that you're aiming for. You put that rank somewhere where you can see it. So I got this thing hanging up, in my room. I just brought it here for our purposes today as well to show people that you got to put up where you're going. You can't just look like where you've been. You got to visualize it. You got to write the vision plain. So this is still my dream, to be an Air Force JAG. It's what I've seen. It's what I've practiced. It's what I went to school for. But in addition to that, I know that I would love to have a career in sports and entertainment. As I mentioned, even with my story, growing up, told by coaches that, man, this guy can't remember a playbook. So I always told myself, you know what, they wouldn't let me on the field, but I'm coming for the building. That's just how my mindset works in life. And yeah, so I always just had a passion for sports and entertainment. He has a quote book.
Writing it down.
He sounds like my godmother. Whenever I talk to her, before I say a word, she tells me, wait 1 minute. I need to go get my book, And, it's just, yeah.
Yeah, I got let's be great day.
Yeah.
Let's make it a great day. Why not us?
Yeah.
Oh, what was that? Ain't been there, ain't going there, ain't gonna get there.
Yeah.
That was my favorite one, I think, out of all of them. Role model, real model, highlights, little lights, no field, going to take the building. Like,
But you know what, though? I tell you this, fellas, like, I know that I didn't get here by myself. No matter what my
yeah,
aspirations are, no matter how many congratulatories I get, I look back at my family. I look back at my McDill family, my military family in general. I consider you all to be my military family as well. We're brothers and sisters out there, in arms forever. We represent this uniform. It just means so much. So I just appreciate you for also taking the time out just to even speak to me. And, I think back to these moments and, the conversations, like everything meant something. Like as I'm looking at this uniform now, like I'm thinking about my family. And I see my name on one side, my last name, and then I see the U.S. Air Force on another. And I'm just reminded even in this moment that, we don't go as far as our dreams. We go as far as our team. It's the people that support us along the way, that really help us to be where we are. Like it truly does take a village. It takes strong SJAs. Like since I've been at McDill, I've had, a changeover of 3, SJAs, and all of them have been very supportive and very knowledgeable, when it came to if I had questions about this journey, like, okay, what do I put on my resume? What do I put, what classes do I need to take in law school? What do I need to put, on XYZ, my application, to become a JAG, or what internships do I need to look at? So I know I didn't get here by myself. I think about my NCOICs, I think about like, I'd hate to say one name or many names because I know I'm going to forget somebody, but all of them are great. But they took me in as if I was family. They never treated me any different because I was a reservist. And I'm always grateful for that. They always included me. They never made me feel like I was an outcast or, they never made me feel like I was less than myself. They didn't care if I was great, and that's the thing I love about, leaders, is that they're trying to make other leaders leaders, and I'm always, blessed to say that, I had a good team and, I'll probably leave you with this. I'm a country boy at home from Southwest Georgia. So I love agricultural analogies at the end of the day. I feel like it best explains who I am and where I'm going and what I'm trying to say. And that is this, you can be good seed all day, but if your soil is not right, you're not going to be able to grow. So I can look at my soil over the years being in the military, looking at my family, looking at my law school family. I'll also throw them in there as well. And just realizing that this community became my village in which I was able to grow. And I just want to be able to use these same principles, these same lessons, these same struggles, to be able to show people like, hey, this isn't a wound anymore. This is a scar. And if I can go through everything that I've gone through to get to this point, I know that you can too. So it's so much bigger than me. This story, the video, this uniform, this suit, when people see me, when you see this in the background, like I want to make this so much bigger than me. My experiences, like it's not about me at all. What am I doing for somebody else? It's about bettering our communities, bettering our nation, and, making leaders leaders. People should be better because we are here, so yes, sir.
a true testament to the word that I think gets used too much, but the meaning of using it too much is really the point of resiliency, right? So what a story, and thank you for sharing with us. I have one last question, and then Senior Perez Ajola can go ahead and take it, but I kind of want you to attack it at the question that I ask at a brand new person before joining the military. Now that since we can take paralegals off the street, right? So towards them, and then also current paralegals that may be thinking about being an attorney. So what, if you can like capture it, what would you say to them if they wanted to join the Air Force first as enlisted, thinking about becoming a JAG, and then for the paralegals that are currently doing the grind right now and trying to make their own path to the end result of where you're at?
I would say probably a few things. I would say that you will win if you do not quit. I think that this journey for me, there were times where it looked like nothing was happening, but the one thing that I've learned is, especially as an enlisted person, is that you can't stop. You can't stop. Sometimes, are you stuck or have you stopped? If you know that you have a dream and you know that that's in your heart to do, you can't stop doing what you've been doing that got you to this point. Same things that it's going to take you to get the blessing, it's going to be the same things that it takes you to keep it. And that may mean just doing what you've been doing on a day-to-day. Sometimes we look for the spectacular, or if I can just, go to law school. Sometimes it just may mean getting this discharge packet together, Sometimes it just may be executing a flawless Article 15 packet. So it's not so much of the abnormal as it is the routine, and that's what I would say to a lot of, our present and also our future paralegals who aspire to be JAGs.
What a great way, different way. I think is a more meaningful way to say grow where you're planted, man. That was, woo.
There you go.
And that's it. I'm going to go ahead and play this for my guys. Be all good. I have a really great team. This is great.
Absolutely.
Man, thank you so much. That was great.
I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you all for just taking the time out to not only listen, but also dialogue. It's not about monologue at all. I just appreciate the opportunity because I see that you all have been there and done that. I see the things, just by even looking at your ranks, the things that I can imagine that you've done to just get to this point. But to talk to a senior airman, I think that's something I'll always remember. But I'm grateful. It's not about me at all. It's about the betterment of our Air Force and the betterment of our JAG Corps. And thank you both for having me today as well.